Today, we're exploring something that every leader faces, but very few discuss openly: how to navigate the emotional storms that come with leadership while keeping your team performing at their best. Whether it's market pressure, transformation challenges, or the daily fires that need fighting, your emotional state as a leader ripples through the entire organization. We'll explore practical science based techniques that help you maintain your equilibrium and, by extension, create the conditions for your team to thrive. Now, this isn't about suppressing emotion or putting on a brave face. It's about building the kind of emotional resilience that earns trust and enables performance when it matters the most. So, I mentioned about ripple effects, and there is a true ripple effect of how our, as leaders, emotional states affect the rest of the organization, certainly the teams that we work closely with. It affects their performance, it affects their ability to focus, it affects their ability to think through situations. And the more the visible and the stronger the emotional response that we have as leaders, the greater the effect it has on our teams. And that can be both positive and negative. So this is emotional contagion, and there's a real influence from it on productivity and morale. If we are unable to maintain a stable emotional perspective in all the situations that we encounter for prolonged periods of time, that can have really, really detrimental effects on teams, long-term detrimental effects. So we need to be very careful, yet at the same time, we can't be paranoid. We can't be walking on eggshells. So there needs to be a balance. We have to recognize that there is impact of our emotional states on decision making and the team's ability to innovate, create, deliver, perform. Now, this isn't about leaving the emotions at the door. You may have heard that, and that's a very classic, traditional way of looking at it. This is business. No, this is not personal. This is about business. Okay, let's understand that yes, we do want to maintain a balanced professional demeanor in work. Absolutely. And we have to recognize that we are living beings. Everybody, ourselves and everybody around us, is a living being, and we can't just shut off emotions. We're not machines. And I do have, frankly, strong concerns that with the advent of AI in the workplace, that there will be this blurring, further blurring of the lines, and people expecting this unemotional response that they can get from AI systems from human beings. And that just doesn't work. Neuroscience shows us that the emotions cannot be shut off. When we attempt to shut them off, to achieve that business toughness, that leads to suppression, not regulation. And there's a very big difference. When we suppress emotions, that has a negative effect. Whether it's immediate or long term, it has a negative effect. This is what creates a dysfunctional working relationship. Whereas regulation is the ability to bring into balance our emotions, regardless of the situation. And we do want regulation. We don't want to just fly off the handle in whatever the situation is. It doesn't matter whether it's reasonable or not to have a strong response to a situation because it's a strong, charged situation. No, we want to have a regulated response, regardless of whether the emotion, the situation is charged, high stakes or not. So there's a really important relevance of this emotional regulation when we're talking about AI-driven transformations. Like everything else in AI amplifies. Whatever is good is better, whatever is bad is even worse. And there's this tech-driven pressure that amplifies the emotional friction. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of ambiguity, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of concerns, a lot of unknowns. And that creates an environment that is ripe for emotional outbursts. So having calm leaders who create a safe, adaptive environment for teams to flourish is really critical. Having the level heads behind what builds our future with AI is going to create the foundation for a better, stable future with AI. Otherwise, we could end up paying a big price long term. So when we're talking about emotional reactions and our emotional states and emotional outbursts, one of the things that we really need to understand is emotions themselves and what triggers emotions. So with identifying emotional triggers becomes very important. There are common types of emotional triggers, like, for example, status threats. As a leader, anything that we feel is going to threaten our status, the signals our role or reputation may be shrinking, that's going to trigger a response. How we manage the response is important. The response itself is reasonable. It's understandable that that will happen. It's not about suppressing, ignoring, or pretending that emotions don't happen. They do. It's about how we manage them, how we get through them. Another common type of emotional trigger is that of perceived failure. There's evidence that we missed a target or disappointed a peer. These are objective situations that we need to manage through whenever there is, whether it's real or it's a perception of some type of failure. And the other one I wanted to bring up, which is huge, is that ambiguity. These are moments when the path forward is unclear or contradictory to everything that we know. And this is such a huge area. I'm going to come back to it later in the talk today, because it really is critical at this moment where AI, everything about it is ambiguous, is uncertain. We really need to pay attention to this one because it's very ripe for opportunity for people, leaders, to react without realizing what's going on. And they're just being affected by the ambiguity, the uncertainty, all of the fears associated with AI initiatives. So we really need to be mindful of that one. That's a really big topic. Now, when we look at just the emotional responses, okay, and the triggers that we need to be looking at, there's a neuroscience on the emotional responses, and most of us have heard about it. There's a fight and flight and freeze reactions in the brain. The amygdala, the part of the brain that responds, kind of shuts everything off. It prevents higher brain function, the prefrontal cortex function, where we do more detailed and analytical thinking. This is more about reacting to a perceived threat. And the brain doesn't distinguish between the difference of a wild animal chasing us and their life is a threat, or a complicated politically or technically complex situation at work. It's just a threat. And whatever the threat is, the brain responds with, I need to protect myself. And in those kind of situations, that's not when we're thinking our clearest. And that gives opportunity for emotions to flare up. So we really need to be mindful and aware that, again, this is just factual. This is the way that we are. This is part of our humanity, having emotions, and how emotions can creep up, especially when there is a threat, when there is a contentious situation, a difficult situation that we need to navigate through. So in order to help us get through it, the first thing is we really need to recognize, be able to have the ability to recognize the escalation patterns. There are telltale signs that our emotions are starting to go up. So borrowing from, I think it's poker playing, there are tells. There are things that tell what's really going on, what our play is, what our emotions are in a given situation. These are patterns that we tend to fall to when we are under stress. So, for example, when we're having a stressful response, we may tighten our voice, or we may interrupt people more often. We may avoid eye contact, or maybe there's a tick like tapping our foot or with our finger on the table. Or we may default to overly controlling language. That's a form of aversion, is that we don't want to deal with the situation. The situation has gotten out of control. It's made us very uncomfortable. That discomfort triggers an emotional response. We don't want to deal with it, and we shut it off. How do we shut it off? By engaging in controlling language to try to stop this. That's what's happening. So we really need to paying attention to how we are responding to those tell signs that we are experiencing an emotional response, so that then we can do something about it. There are early warnings. And if we are able to understand and recognize those early warnings, then we can do something about it. We can build signals into our schedule. Just simply do body scans, check-ins, asking trusted peers, for pattern-based feedback. Have you noticed me doing and then talk about what it is that you think maybe you may be doing, to see what their perspective is. Because sometimes our perception of what we're doing is not in line with what others may likely perceive. So it's really valuable to hear what others think. No, we don't necessarily have to do what everybody tells us around us, but having that mirror placed in front of us can be really helpful, for us to recognize when we are falling to emotional responses. And others around us will notice. Over time, they get to know us, and they can recognize the patterns. So it's helpful to ask them about our patterns. I mentioned earlier that ambiguity is a particularly important trigger, especially these days with AI. So I wanted to elaborate on that. And ambiguity inherently feels dangerous. And there's a good reason for it. There are centuries in our human history of command and control practice, which became formalized by waterfall thinking. So under that kind of leadership, if you want to call it that, there the perception is that leaders must always have the answer. The very definition of lead means that you have the answer, therefore you can tell people what to do and where to go. Certainty equals competence. So under the waterfall mindset, if as a leader you don't have the answer, that's a failure. That's catastrophic. That's not acceptable. And therefore, leaders are not eager to be transparent anytime that they're not feeling certain. The reality of it is that good leaders that I've ever spoken to, anytime that we have this conversation, it's always the same. The truth is, we don't always know. And unfortunately, the waterfall mindset makes us pretend that we do. And that can be very dangerous because many times that can derail teams. That can push teams in a direction that we really shouldn't have gone down. And the only reason why we're doing it is because we're protecting ourselves from that perception created by the waterfall mindset. I know this is going to be uncomfortable to hear, and it's not intended as any type of attack. And I really want for everybody to consider this perspective of what's going on. Yes, I've always said, and I will always say, that there is a place for waterfall. There are types of work that indeed can be managed in a very command and control direct way. And that's the most efficient, the most effective, and arguably appropriate way to do it, because it is going to be the most cost effective, the most repeatable, lead to the best quality in some cases, type of execution. However, there is a difference in leadership from a perspective of that which I'm going to label, I apologize, as unintelligent leadership, and that which is intelligent leadership. And the caution in here is to fall to just unintelligent leadership. Then this is the leadership that is only accepting and only performs when there is certainty. If that's a type of work that you're currently doing, and there's always certainty, and there can always be an expectation that the leader always has to have the right answer, then that's where my caution comes in. And I've expressed it before, that these are the jobs that are ripe for AI to take over. So your job is at risk if that meets the criteria of the type of work that you're doing today. That is programmable. That is something that we can put into a system, and a system can watch and monitor and execute reliably and predictably because it's known. That's the easiest one to get rid of. So unintelligent leadership, there's really very value in that. For centuries, there was huge value in that. And for centuries, it delivered all of the wonderful things that we have today in society. So again, there's a place and a time, and it's appropriate. And moving forward, yeah, that's going to disappear. It's the most cost-effective thing to do. So we really need to focus away from that type of leadership, and move into the intelligent leadership. But before I get there, there are real costs associated with unintelligent leadership, where the leader either shuts down debate, for example, or manufactures, as I mentioned earlier, a premature answer just to navigate through, because the leader has to have an answer. So gives an answer, but it may not be a good answer. But at the same time, is shutting down everybody else from coming up with answers. because we're really walking in an unknown place, in an uncertain situation, where we really need to have the discussion and look at the plurality of perspectives in order to come up with an answer. When the leader steps in and just gives a premature answer, just because the leader is supposed to do that, that can lead to real problems. That can lead to be the cause for failure. So we've got to be really careful with that. Again, especially moving forward into the future, there's really going to be no value in that. There's a lot of detriment to that. And the other thing that can happen is when things go wrong, and there is the failure, and sometimes as a result of that premature answer, the leader then blames others for not being clear, for not being good at the execution. And that's not right. So team curiosity in that kind of environment collapses, innovation stalls, and there's no psychological safety. It completely kills it, it disappears, which are hallmarks of waterfall environments. By contrast, intelligent leadership, yes, knows how to operate in the certainty space. Yes, of course, if we know the answer, if it's something that's clear and if it's something that we know, of course we can provide that. And of course we can offer that as part of our leadership. And intelligence leadership is equally comfortable with discovery, not just certainty, but also discovery. So the leader moves comfortably between the known and the unknown. It's okay. We can lead when we don't know. That's the important piece. That's the thing that we need to understand and appreciate, that it is possible. Leaders can bring in a lot of really good skills, nurturing, supporting skills that have nothing to do with the answer. They don't have the answer. And they are the things that are needed, that the team needs in order to get to the answer. These leaders share what is clear. They articulate what isn't so that we can focus on that. And they invite the teams into co-discovery, working together, inclusive of the leadership, to discover what the answer is. Ambiguity becomes a shared puzzle rather than a personal indictment. It isn't a mark of, oh, the leader didn't know, that's a bad leader. No, the leader was able to give the team what the team needed in order to find the answer, even though the leader didn't know what the answer was. So many of the good leaders that I've ever talked to are very open and having the conversation and saying, you know, I really don't know, but we got to figure it out. So we just got to figure out the steps to help the teams and ourselves through that uncomfortable space of ambiguity and uncertainty. And that is today. Everything that we're dealing with today is very ambiguous, very uncertain. So we need to be able to recognize that this ambiguity trigger is real and it's very powerful and it's very dangerous. So we need to look for those telltale shifts. For example, a rapid jump into binary language, right and wrong, yes and no. That can be a sign that we're falling into that space. Or statements that close exploration, just quickly answering, it's like, that won't work, or we've already tried that. No, it's if we're in that ambiguous space, let's keep all the possibilities open until we have to make a decision. But until that point, we really want to allow divergence of in the discussion to bring in every possibility. And that's okay. That's not a problem. There are body cues as well. It's not just in our language and what we say, but it's also in our body cues. So for example, tightening fists or leaning away from the table, you know, shallow breathing, all of these things, they're indicators that we've fallen into an emotional trigger. What is it? Okay. The intelligent responses, for example, are naming the unknowns aloud. Just simply starting by saying, here's what we still don't know. That instantly normalizes exploration. You know? That's very clear. We don't know. None of us know. Okay, this is what we don't know. How are we going to do it? How are we going to deal with it? How are we going to navigate through it? Or we can offer scaffolding. Provide the facts that you do hold, and then ask the group, what data or experiments could uncover the rest? We've set it up. That's how we can help the teams. That's how we can lead the teams, by making clear and visible everything that we do know, so that we don't have to worry about it. It's already laid out. We don't have to waste time on that. And pointing the finger in the direction of where we need to go. This is where the mystery is. Let's go figure it out. Let's go on an exploration and figure out what it is together. You know? And that's perfectly fine. We can also reframe the risk, emphasize that learning fast is safer than pretending to be certain early. So this is where that premature answer is not a good response. It's a typical response from the waterfall perspective, but it's not a good response when we're dealing with ambiguity. And again, AI is all about ambiguity and uncertainty. So those rapid responses and complete responses, those are very dangerous. Those are probably some of the most dangerous. So the key takeaway is that ambiguity is inevitable, especially today with AI, and treating it as shared frontier instead of a personal failure separates unintelligent control from intelligent leadership that carries teams and humanity into new territory, into the future. It really is like exploring a new country or a new planet. You know? It's and hopefully we can approach it from that perspective and with the humility of saying, I don't know. There's a lot of intelligence in being able to say, I don't know, and working with the team and helping the team in the ways that we can help them and not hurting them by pretending that we do know. So this is the difference between unintelligent and intelligent leadership. Um, there's a place and a time for both, and there's less and less and less room for the unintelligent because that's going to be replaced by AI. AI will get to the point where it can handle it. So let's focus on the intelligent one. That's where the real value of that humanity brings to the table, because AI is not going to be able to close that gap in the way that human beings can. This is part of our humanity. So this is what we can leverage and the best that we can offer to teams at this moment. We'll find out what the other things are as we go along. But for now, that's a real high value. So in order to navigate through our emotional ups and downs and roller coasters and all of the triggers that we're going to encounter, there needs to be physiological grounding, things that we do with our body, with our mind, that helps us stay grounded. And this is part of regulation that I mentioned earlier. So simple things can be something like box breathing. You might have heard about it, or breath focus reset techniques. You're in the middle of a meeting and it's starting to get really heated, and you can see yourself engaging in that emotional state. You can start feeling yourself going up and down, or maybe just down, down, down. The moment that you notice that, nobody needs to know. You're in the middle of the meeting, engage in some breathing techniques. It's like taking a breath in, holding it in for a few seconds, letting it out, making your breath become rhythmic. I oftentimes talk to people about when have you ever met somebody who was furious, who was really, really angry, and yet having a very nice, calm, rhythmic breathing? It doesn't happen. Okay. So this is a way that you can use your breathing to calm the mind. There's that effect that breathing has. Very powerful. And it's very quick. And again, nobody needs to know that you're doing it. And that's something that can help you in the situation. Another thing that can help you is you're sitting in the meeting and you're tense and uncomfortable. That's probably going to build and feed into the emotions. Instead, walk around or shift your posture or relax your muscles. Intently focus on the muscle and just relax it. That can really help you get through a difficult situation and or shift that emotional trigger that you're reacting to. There's also cognitive reframing of the situation that you're dealing with, reinterpreting the high-stake moments through contextual lenses. Like, for example, there's a technique of name it to tame it. What you do is you label the emotion, and that alone reduces its intensity. This phrase was coined by Dr. Dan Siegel. And this is based on neuroscience. And what it does is just simply by forcing that conscious thought, that thinking, the processing of labeling my emotion at a moment. I'm anxious. I'm overwhelmed. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. Just simply giving it that name, that can sometimes be enough to help us work our way out of it. Environmental elements can also help. Many of you may be aware that some people carry around objects, that can help ground us in moments that are stressful and moments that are difficult. Some people carry a smooth stone, for example, or they have on their desk a phrase, a quote that is very meaningful to them. And that's important. When we use these kinds of tools, it's important that they have meaning to us, that we connect to them, that we can relate to them. Because in the moment when we need them, it's not so much about thinking, it's about in a subliminal way, in a very subtle way, having that reminder of what that object represents to us. So if we like the smoothness of the stone, that smoothness can carry us into smooth thinking, okay, and smooth feeling. So that's the kind of relationship. If the phrase, if the quote that you look at always uplifts you, always gives you hope, for example, or always engages you with curiosity and eagerness, well, those kind of feelings will become part of our thinking and part of our feeling at the moment, just by looking at the little plaque that has the quote on it. We don't have to read it. Just simply seeing it can trigger that and remind us. So these become anchor objects that support our emotional states that we want to stay grounded on. They're symbolical links to a centered emotional state that we want to always stay in. So these are the kinds of things that we can do. Now, recovery and reset is important. We will fall out of that emotional balanced state. And it's important to take tactical pauses to reset after an emotional overload. Rituals support that emotional decompression. And a lot of the things that practices like Scrum and Kanban have brought to surface is that having these rituals, sometimes it's less about the ritual than it is about the benefit that comes from them. And the benefits can be, there are many benefits depending on the ritual. The daily stand-up, again, it's not about status reporting, as I mentioned before. It's more about that check-in. And it's more about creating that space where it's okay to have a conversation about we're derailed or we're derailing or we're about to head into derailment. We've created a space where the emotion, it's okay to express, I'm concerned. It's okay to express, I'm nervous about this. And it doesn't need to escalate further. It's just simply a moment where we can have that conversation openly and freely about it. So the rituals can be very helpful, especially at the beginning where we're just learning how to do these things. They can be really powerful and really helpful in grounding. Another thing that we want to do is we want to pay attention to others' emotions. And as leaders, we want to be mindful of others' emotions, and we also want to make sure that we have a buffer zone. We want to avoid getting so wrapped up in others' emotions that we fall to extremes. Either we, out of caring, sincere caring, I've always seen nothing but good intentions. We want for our team to be safe and feel comfortable and all that. And as a result of that, we just go out of our way to make everything safe, safe, safe. The problem about that is that we end up shielding the teams oftentimes from reality. And at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're stunting their growth. We're not allowing the team to fall off the bike, get a few scrapes, and from that learning how not to fall off the bike. Learning how to roller skate, the most important thing for me when I learned was how not to fall. And the only way that could happen was by falling. So it's very a nice thought to think I don't want anybody to get hurt. And at the same time, when we take on too much of that emotional load from our teams, what we're really doing is we're hurting them. We're not allowing them to figure out how to work their way through. And at the other end, it's a completely detached, unemotional, uncaring type of response. It doesn't help us and doesn't help the teams either. So there needs to be a balance. We need to figure out the middle ground between the two in order to be truly effective to teams. It's okay to have emotional firewalls. They sustain our own clarity but we don't need to fall to the extent of isolating ourselves from others. So having some ways of staying connected, staying empathic, caring always about teams without allowing it to become an emotional drain on us that prevents us from being effective leaders. That's the important thing. So like everything is having a balance. These practices, they really help us establish trust and credibility with teams when we are authentic. That's a very important thing. And being authentic, part of being authentic is expressing to the teams when we are experiencing something. Our emotions are high, just being open about it. Don't fall to the extreme of just being this open book, and if you're mad, just letting it out to the team and telling them I'm angry and with emotion and all that. That can probably be off-putting and not the best approach with teams. And at the same time, it's okay to tell them, I'm concerned about this. This is not heading in a good direction, and I'm concerned about the fallout that may come from it or the outcome where we're heading. For them to know that you're worried, that you're concerned, that's okay. And then figure out how to navigate through it. So having authenticity, showing that you're human and grounded, not rattled, that's important. And this, in my experience, I've been a leader of operations teams for many, 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 many years. And the kind of teams that I was leading, they were mission critical type of operations. Any kind of downtime, any kind of disruption to the environments was a really big deal. So you can imagine that stakes are really high. Emotions can come really high very quickly. And the thing that my teams always noticed and always appreciated was that I had such a calm demeanor. The more serious the situation, the calmer I tended to be. And as I said at the beginning, these emotions are infectious, they're contagious. My calmness calmed the situation, calmed the team. We all knew that we were in trouble. We all knew that there was a crisis. I didn't need to add to it hysterical screaming and yelling and outbursts and things like that. That would not help anything. Instead, bring about calm to the situation with clarity about, yep, we're in trouble. What are we doing about it? Help the team maintain their own calmness. So that's really important, and that you can really impact your teams. Speaking transparently about the emotion that you're going through without losing the authority in the situation, that's important. And providing the support for the team to navigate and figure their way through the difficult situation. That's what's critical. That's what's going to lead you to success and the team to success, figuring out how to get through it. So it's all within our ability. We have the ability to do this as long as we maintain that even keel. And overall, all that this talk has been about is applied mindfulness. This is mindfulness in action. Having the ability to detect, see, understand our own emotions, and then applying methods to help us regulate those emotions. Recognizing that we're humans, we're going to have emotions. There's nothing wrong with that. And how we navigate through them, that's what's important. So the first step is stay in that mindful state. Stay in that present moment. Be aware of your emotions as they're happening. Label them if that helps. And then take actions to regulate them. Maintaining that even keel does have a beneficial effect. It's going to help the team calm down. Flying off the handle is not going to help the team. That's only going to create stress. Stress leads to closing minds, and then that's what puts people in just tell me what to do, and people are no longer thinking. If we want for our teams to remain engaged, thinking, and coming up with good solutions, we need to support them. And the best way to support them through these difficult situations, be authentic, be clear. We don't have to sugarcoat things. And having that even keel emotional state, maintaining that will help you as a leader and will help your teams. So I hope that you're able to do it. It's challenging. I understand. And when we're successful, we're all successful as a team. And that's what leads us to success together. So beyond that, if you'd like to learn more about servant leadership and how that helps teams, take one of these. I'll tell you all about it.